If you're over 40 and you feel like your energy is disappearing, you probably blame your age. But getting older isn't what's killing your drive. It's the fact that your 40-year-old body is still trying to survive on your 25-year-old habits. In your 20s and 30s, you could get away with a lot. Bad sleep, poor eating, and inconsistent habits. Back then, you had the energy to recover from your mistakes and the time to undo the damage. But after 40, the margin for error gets a lot thinner. Your metabolism naturally declines, you start losing muscle mass, your cells are becoming less efficient at producing energy. Testosterone and other hormones start to dip naturally. If you layer chronic work stress and poor sleep on top of that, you end up with a constant low-grade exhaustion that never really goes away. The harsh reality is that your life is now built on a set of habits that your 40-plus body simply can't handle anymore. Most men think they can just manage this exhaustion forever. I thought I could too until my body finally decided to pull the emergency brake. I spent 9 miserable nights in a hospital bed to find out that I had an autoimmune disease called vasculitis that was attacking my kidneys. I was overweight, I was tired, and I was watching my health slip through my fingers while my immune system attacked my own blood vessels. When I finally asked the doctors what caused this to happen, or how I could prevent it in the future, they basically said, we don't know. That answer was scary, but it was also the most clarifying moment of my life. I realized right then that I couldn't just drift through my life on autopilot anymore. With no clear guidance on how to prevent a relapse, my thought was simple. If my overall body was healthier, then my odds had to improve. So I had to stop being a passive observer of my own decline, because I realized the truth that most of us try to ignore. A concept from author Mark Manson that changed my life. The quote says, "You are responsible for everything that happens in your life, even if it's not your fault." It may not have been my fault that I had a rare autoimmune disease, but it was 100% my responsibility to manage how I lived with it. I had to stop being overly dependent on doctors for my health and realize that they're mostly just managing my disease, and had to stop blaming my wife for the food she was buying or blaming my kids for my lack of time. I realized that I'm the common denominator in my life. And when you accept that it's all on you, life actually gets a lot simpler because the power is back in your hands. But here's the trap. Once you accept that responsibility, your instinct is to try and fix everything by tomorrow morning. You want to make up 10 years of neglect in 10 days. And that's how you fail. We tried the 30-day challenges and the crash diets asking, how fast can I do this? But the speed of the loss is often the very reason for the failure. If you rush the process, you're just going to gain it all back again because you haven't built a sustainable lifestyle. The data shows it can take up to 254 days, not 21, for a habit to truly become automatic. That's why I gave myself a full year to lose the 35 pounds I needed to drop. I stopped asking, how fast could I do this, and started asking, how long can I actually sustain this? And to sustain something for a year, you need more than willpower. You need an identity shift. Most people think a healthy lifestyle is about restriction. For example, they say, I can't eat that, which tells the brain they're being deprived. But a healthy person says, I don't eat that. When you say I don't, you're stating a fact about who you are, not a rule you're struggling to follow. You aren't a person on a diet, you're the type of person who prioritizes energy and vitality over a 5-minute dopamine hit. You start looking at food like a trade. A sugary cereal might give you a quick hit, but it charges you a massive tax of brain fog and a mid-afternoon crash. So you reach for whole foods and proteins, not because the rule told you to, but because you love the way they make you feel. To make this stick, you have to start ridiculously small. Most men fail because they try to outwork a decade of neglect in a single week. They hit the gym for 2 hours, destroy their joints, and then quit because they can't walk the next day. I started with a 12-minute run. Not a 5-mile trek, just 12 minutes at whatever pace I could manage. It wasn't about training my lungs, it was about training my compliance. I needed to prove to myself that I could show up before I earned the right to go hard. I wasn't optimizing for calories, I was optimizing for the repetition. Once the habit of showing up was dialed in, I layered on 10 minutes of mobility, then a simple strength routine. Because consistency will always beat intensity. 80% consistency for a year will beat 100% consistency for 2 weeks every single time. You don't build a house by moving a mountain, you build it by laying one brick perfectly every single day. But that consistency is won or lost in the moments when you start negotiating with yourself. We all have that internal lawyer who tries to talk us out of our habits. When the alarm goes off, that voice that says, "You didn't sleep well. You should take a rest day." So I stopped negotiating with myself and I started treating my movement like a power plant. A power plant doesn't have energy, it generates it. On the days I feel the most tired, those are often the days I need to move the most. Even if I only run for 5 minutes, I still put on my shoes and I still get out the door. Showing up on the bad days is actually more important than showing up on the good days. It proves that you're the type of person who keeps the promises you make to yourself. And once you start keeping those promises, that discipline naturally ripples into other parts of your life, like your relationships. The Stoics talk about first impressions, those immediate emotional reactions. I realized that my emotional reactions were causing a lot of undue stress in my life. So I started practicing the pause. When I feel triggered or angry, I take a few seconds for my wisdom to come back online. I ask myself, what kind of man do I actually want to be in this moment? This one habit has dramatically improved my relationship with my wife and my kids. I stopped snapping back and realized that even if they're being difficult, my reaction is entirely under my control. But being in control doesn't mean being perfect, because you will fail. You'll have the pizza or you'll skip the run. And when you do, you should remember the wagon metaphor. The wagon is moving toward your goals. If you fall off into the mud, the wagon doesn't stop to wait for you to feel guilty. It just keeps moving. Your only job is to get back on as fast as possible. If you have a bad lunch, just have a good dinner and keep going. A single mistake doesn't define you. Your repeated actions do. And taking responsibility for your health isn't just about looking better in a t-shirt. It's about the people who rely on you. When you prioritize your energy, you get the most meaningful payoff of all: presence. There's nothing more haunting than being physically in the room with your kids or your spouse, but being effectively a ghost because you're trapped in a fog of fatigue and inflammation. When you're drifting, you aren't actually there. You're reactive, you're short-tempered, and you're exhausted. By claiming the identity of a healthy person, you're ensuring that your family doesn't just get what's left over of you at the end of the day. They get the best of you. We've been conditioned to think that focusing on our health is selfish, but it's actually the most selfless thing you can do. You're ensuring that you won't be a burden to them in 20 years and that you're a leader for them right now, because you can't pour from an empty cup. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus once asked, "How much longer are you going to wait to demand the best of yourself?" If you're over 40 and feeling stuck, the answer isn't a new 30-day challenge. The answer is realizing that the drift is over. You're the leader of your habits and the manager of your energy. Accept right now that your health and vitality are on you. And that's not a burden, it's the ultimate freedom. Because it means you have the power to change it. Pick one small habit today. Stop the negotiations and decide right now who you're going to become. Because better moments lead to better days, and better days lead to a better life. If you found this video helpful, please click the like button and subscribe for more content like this.